All right, so are we ready to like totally unpack this whole public breakup thing?
Yeah.
We are diving deep into all the drama with country music star Bryan and social media influencer Brianna LaPaglia calling it quits.
Yeah.
We've got this Fox News article, and let me tell you, it really gets into all the nitty-gritty details.
I love that.
I know, right? It's like the juicy celebrity gossip, but stick with me on this one because it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Especially when we start thinking about like public personas and online versus real life and how we process, heartbreak, like in the age of Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so fascinating to me is how this all went down publicly, right? Like, this wasn't a quiet behind closed doors kind of thing. This breakup unraveled in front of everyone through Instagram stories, cryptic notes, the whole 9 yards. It's like a case study in modern heartbreak, you know?
Totally. So, okay, picture this, right? Zach, he takes to his Instagram story, announces the breakup himself. He's taking responsibility, saying he wasn't perfect, apologizing, like, classic breakup script stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But then he also throws in this whole thing about going through an incredibly hard year.
Yes. And that's where I think things start to get really interesting because while he's putting out this very calculated message, Brianna's like finding out about it through social media like the rest of us.
Oh, wow.
She even talked about like feeling blindsided in this like really emotional YouTube video, which I mean, talk about adding another layer to all of this. Like right from the get-go, you see them dealing with this breakup so differently in the public eye.
And then there's that whole lead up to the announcement. Like just the day before, Brianna posts this like cryptic message about life going on even when you don't want it to. And you know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like you can't help but play armchair psychologist a little bit. Like we instinctively try to search for meaning in retrospect, especially with these public figures, right?
Right.
Like, did she know a breakup was coming? Was this a preemptive strike? We
Yeah.
see this all the time. Fans combing through old interviews, social media posts, like looking for clues. It's a very human impulse.
Totally. It reminds me of those like deep dives into Taylor Swift lyrics where everyone's trying to figure out like who inspired each song.
Exactly.
It's like we're hardwired to find patterns, to connect the dots, even when like it might not be there.
Totally. And when you factor in the whole like picture perfect world of Instagram, it gets even more complex. I mean, think about it. Just a few months ago, Zach and Brianna are posting those gushing tributes to each other.
Oh, I know. Talking about forever and all that.
I know, forever. And it's like, it's easy to forget how curated these online personas are, how much they edit out the messy reality of actually being in a relationship.
Totally. Like
Yeah.
Brianna even called Zach her what? Person forever.
Oh, I know.
After like only a year of dating.
I know.
It's wild. And seeing those posts now, knowing what we know now, it's like this highlight reel of everything that's gone. It really makes you think about how social media can warp our perceptions of relationships, like both our own and the people we follow online.
It's a good reminder that, like, we really only see the tip of the iceberg. Like, we only see that carefully crafted narrative that someone chooses to put out there into the world.
Right.
And that can be really jarring when, like, reality intrudes, like with this very public breakup.
Yeah. And speaking of reality intruding, like Brianna's response video is so raw and honest. Like you can hear the hurt and confusion in her voice when she talks about, loving Zach unconditionally and feeling discarded.
Right.
That word discarded, it really stuck with me.
That's a powerful word.
It's just like, when you think something's really important to you and then someone just tosses it away, like it makes you question everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that like social rejection, even if it's happening online, it can still trigger the same pain pathways in the brain as like physical pain.
Wow.
So when Brianna uses a word like discarded, it's not just dramatic, right? It reflects like a very visceral, real experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of makes you think about Zach's apology in a whole new light. Like he's owning up to his part in it, but then he also says he's had this like incredibly hard year. So how do you read that? I mean, can you feel sincere remorse but also be trying to, protect your image at the same time?
That is such an interesting question.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, like, maybe he's acknowledging his own struggles as a way to help people understand his actions, right? Maybe even get a little sympathy. But it can also come across as deflecting, like he's shifting the focus away from how much he hurt Brianna.
Yeah. Especially when you think about how calculated these public personas are, especially with, celebrities. Like it's all about their image, their brand, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and it's got to be exhausting to always have to be on,
Totally.
thinking about how everything you do will be perceived, how it could affect your career, your fans even. Makes you wonder what it does to their personal lives, their relationships.
It's a level of scrutiny most of us like can't even imagine.
I can't imagine.
But in a way, it's like a just a more intense version of what we all kind of do online, right? Like we're all
Yeah.
curating our own images, always trying to show the best side of ourselves.
It's like we're all performing on this stage, to some extent,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Like, it helps us connect with people, build community, share things we care about. But I think it's important to remember that it's not the whole picture.
It's like comparing your own behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel.
Exactly. And when those two worlds collide, when you have a breakup that spills out from behind that curated facade, it can be really jarring for everybody.
It really makes you think twice. Like everyone has a story
They do.
that goes way beyond the like filtered photos and the funny captions. Like we all have our own baggage.
We do. We all have those like messy, complicated parts of ourselves that like deserve just as much compassion as those polished versions that we're like putting out there online.
For sure. It makes you wonder though, right? Like, are we missing out on real connection because we're so busy trying to like curate this perfect image all the time?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you find that balance?
Right.
Social media can be amazing for connection, for finding your people, but it's so easy to get like sucked into that comparison game.
Oh, tell me about it. Like striving for this impossible standard,
Right.
especially when you're seeing all these like seemingly perfect relationships,
Right.
like Zach and Brianna.
I know. They were like hashtag couple goals, weren't they?
Totally.
Yeah.
At least on Instagram.
Yeah.
And now it's like, boom,
Yeah.
super public, super messy breakup.
It just reminds you that we're all human. You know what I mean? Even the people that we put up on these pedestals and relationships, I don't care how picture perfect they seem online,
Oh, yeah.
they take work, compromise. And you got to be willing to deal with the hard stuff.
No, for sure. Like it goes way deeper than just liking someone's post or whatever, leaving a cute comment.
Right.
It's about like actually showing up for the other person, being there,
Absolutely.
putting in the effort, even when it's tough.
Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, this whole thing with Zach and Brianna, as messy as it's been, maybe it'll make people stop and think. Like it's a good reminder to value, like being real, being vulnerable, having the courage to just be yourself,
Right.
online and off.
That's such a good point because it's not about like pointing fingers or judging anybody.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding like the bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
How we're all trying to figure out this whole like online world thing.
Totally. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you're scrolling through your feed and you start feeling that twinge of like, why isn't my life like that? Just take a breath, remember this conversation, and remind yourself there's always more to the story.
So true. Well, that is about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
So good though, right?
So good. See you next time.